Sorry to disappoint you. So what was your expectation? Nah, I'm just an everyday dude. Oh, you expected perfection? This is what Christianity is supposed to be like. I make mistakes, like lots of mistakes. I'm just trying to do the best that I can do. I guess I'm just imperfectly human. Welcome to another episode of the Imperfectly Human podcast. We are your hosts, Mr. Daley and
Johnson, Dr. Johnson.
We got there. We got there. We're gonna have some bloopers today.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a new year.
It is, man. It's a new year, new topic. We want to shout out everyone that's listening on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Breaker, TuneIn. Wherever you may be listening, we want to shout you out. We want to shout out the people that are watching on YouTube. Thank you for continually supporting the people that are helping us hold our position in the top 90 Christian podcasts. Now we're trying to move to the top. So keep supporting.
Yeah,
Tell your friends, tell your mama, tell your mama's mama, tell your mama's mama, whoever you got to tell. We want to move up. Yeah, tell your kinfolk.
Tell your kinfolk. Yeah.
So today's topic, we are talking about unexpected leadership. And Terrence, you said you've got a little something you want to use to get the people on.
Yeah, so when I thought about it and the story came to my mind when I first moved back home to Jackson, and this was before I got involved in like ministry at our church.
Right.
And I was just randomly in, I think like Dollar General or Fred's or something like that. I was just going to get me something in there, and when our church members saw me, like, oh, hey, Terrence, or whatever. She was talking to like one of our other church members. And like, oh, here you go right here. He's like, I'm gonna give you the phone. I was like, hey, she's like, hey, Terrence. She's like, we want you to be a youth leader. I was like, what? I'm like, man, I don't want to be over nothing. I just want to be in the pew. I just don't want to be over nothing. I don't want to do nothing. It's like, no, you know what I'm saying? I think the kids really respond to you and all that kind of stuff. Like, we just, we've been watching you for a while and stuff like that. We want you to accept. And I was like, I get it. And I think that's how the best leaders are. It's the best leaders are people that really don't want to be leaders. And the reason why I say that is because when if it's a position or a role that you've been kind of asked to, but you have to either question your ability to do it, or you feel like, oh, that will cause me to have to grow in the places that I don't know I can go. They're probably the best choice you can make. And so I think that's why a lot of people disqualify ourselves, because we so resistant to being in a position where we're now forced to grow and stretch. And that being involved in the youth department was a blessing for me, because it forced me to then mature on a different level. But then also to then look at, well, now what I say is now going to be relatable to them. So I had to make sure what I say is not damaging to them. It had to be something that builds them up, encourage them, or helps them with their walk with God. But do it in a way that is not so like, this is what you're supposed to do, this is what you got to do, or whatever like that. And so, but it also built me up as far as like my confidence in myself too, because I had to stand in front of them and be confident in whatever I was telling them to do, whatever they were working on, and they had to trust me that I knew what I was doing. So I had to prepare. And that's just like with the podcast, what we're doing, it forces us to prepare differently than we would if we were just, going to church, or we were doing something else, or just having conversation with people we know. We won't have to prepare like we do. But because we're getting on and talking to other people, we have to prepare ourselves because our words can relate to people or connect people to God, which is our ultimate goal. And so we have to make sure that we just not getting on here and just talking just whatever we want to talk about.
For
It had to
real.
be something purposeful. And I think you just look back, God prepares you for your leadership positions or roles, but he has to put you in places that'll make you feel uncomfortable to level you up.
Interesting, because it's funny. It's funny. Did I tell you that I was a youth leader as well?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
we
Yeah.
talk,
Yeah. We
man.
talked about.
Yeah, yeah.
So my experience was how did it happen? So I started going to this church,
Mm-hmm.
and I talked to the pastor about thinking, that I was called to
Mm-hmm.
to pastoring,
Mm-hmm.
and but I said but I didn't want it. So he said, "Well, let's have a conversation." And then he was the one that told me, "Actually, no, your gifting is not to be a pastor. Your gifting is to be a teacher." So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll take that one." I was like,
I'm glad, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
I'll take that one. I'll take that. And then so we started to talk about that, and then they asked me, they said, "Oh, but we'd like you to join a youth group and
Mm-hmm.
become one of the youth leaders." And I was like, "Oh, okay, okay." Now, the reason I was like that was because this was a predominantly white church.
Mm-hmm.
The kids that came to the youth group were predominantly white. So I felt out of place.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what am I going to be able to talk to these kids about that from my life and from my experiences that they would be able to relate to? Because they didn't look like me. They didn't resemble me in my youth. Um, why it was uncomfortable. So you know what you were
Mm-hmm.
saying about God putting you in a
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it felt very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I did grow into it because I started to realize that, hey, irrespective of background, these kids had the same concerns that I had as um, when I was their age. Oh, I like that girl, but I don't know if she likes me. Oh, I like that
Mm-hmm.
boy, and all of that stuff.
All of that.
This kids at
All
school
of that.
want me to hang out and do X, Y, and Z, and they don't want to. And I was like, oh, okay. These kids are going through. This is all the same stuff. So it made it easier to relate to them and to take myself out of it. And then what I found was God allowed me to use that caring and empathetic nature that he'd put in me, because there were kids that were coming there because it was an environment free of bullying for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we had kids that had been picked on because of their weight, or picked on because of whatever their background, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these kids had been picked on, and this was an environment where they could just come and feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
And that really touched me, because I was able to speak to some kids and just say, look, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks about you. The only person that matters is what matters is what God thinks about you and what you think about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone. It definitely made me realize that, hey, maybe there is something in you, because I didn't believe there was anything in me that God could use in that kind of way. And then it was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, maybe there is something in you that God can use. Saw something in you that you could never see in yourself.
Mm-hmm. No, and the other thing too So part of it was, like I said, for you was like the uncomfortability of like I'm one race and now you have me lead this kind of race. Um, but for me, it was part of like, yeah, I'm in the church, but I'm kind of not all the way in the church, and I'm still doing stuff that I want to do. So it's like, like the weekend you be out drinking and stuff, and then you kind of coming in and like I get to church on time and all that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of where I was at the beginning too. So like I'll be up 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, had to get back up and try to be there for service on Sunday and stuff like that. And that's where I started. That's where I was. And then over time, it kind of changed. But I could understand what they were going through because I was going through something similar. I wasn't too far from their age.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it wasn't like some like, oh, can they smell anything?
but isn't that God though? That's how
yeah.
he takes us in our times where we're like, why me?
Why now?
Why now? What?
Why now?
Like, look at
Why
me.
now?
Look what I'm doing. God, you know where I was yesterday? You know where I was yesterday?
Last night, this morning. You know where I was?
Like, God, you know who I was with?
But I think that'll help so many more people because I feel like a lot of people feel like they got to get themselves all the way together to lead people. And I think just like you were talking, and I know we'll get into it, once we go further into the conversation. So I ain't gonna talk too much about it now, but God chooses those type of people that has those kind of experiences, so the people that they lead, they can understand them. And that's when you start to look at what you've experienced or what you've done in your past, that only makes you more relatable to the people that God calls you to lead. So you might think about it like, oh, I used to do this, I used to do that. Like, man, I was out here. You know how people say, you was in the world. Like, oh, I was in the world. I was out there in the world.
You was in these streets.
yeah. But that make what you say to people, they know it's just like it's not
for real.
What just came straight out the Bible. You got some life experience wrapped around it, and that's what people want to know.
Yeah.
And it's the same, when I was doing therapy primarily. People don't care about the plaques on the wall or degrees or whatever. They want to know whatever they talking about, that you understand their viewpoint and perspective, and that you see them as a person. You're not judging them, and you're not looking down on them.
Yeah.
If they can get that from you, and they know that what you telling them is for their benefit, then they more receptive to it. But if they feel like I'm talking to them and I'm above them, then they don't want that. They not gonna connect with that, because then I'm just not a person that's like authority figure. Like, you did this wrong. You did this wrong. You need to get yourself together. Like, look, I know where you at. I ain't been there.
Yeah.
But this is what's gonna happen if you stay on that road. And people can respect that more versus like, this is wrong and that's wrong. You need to change that and change that. Because we all been in these same situations.
Yeah. And I think that's what's refreshing about both of our approaches to coaching, because when we first started talking, one of the first things we said about how we like to coach people is just, hey, I like to tell them what I've been through, because hey, I believe that everything that I've been through in life is for me to help someone else, who's going through that situation. And sometimes, sometimes I feel like accepting my purpose and accepting, this journey of being someone that helps people connect to God, and being someone that helps people walk through life, and being someone that helps people through the difficulties of marriage and raising children and all of those things. I basically painted a target on my back, because God is now saying, okay, but before, so that I can make you relatable to the people, you're going to have to go through some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I definitely felt about leadership,
Mm-hmm.
leadership is not, and this is why I think people should be careful when they, aspire to be leaders,
Yeah.
because leadership is not about getting to the top and then barking orders at people.
Right.
Leadership is a painful process because constantly, even at God, we see Christ as our leader. Christ, it says that Christ is at the right hand of the Father interceding on our behalf, meaning
Mm-hmm.
he is in a constant position and posture of prayer for us.
Mm-hmm.
For us, meaning he is working. He done been to earth, been the sacrificial lamb. Now he's in heaven. He's not even chilling. He's
Mm-hmm.
working to keep our butts safe.
Mm-hmm.
So leadership is not, it's not a cakewalk. It's an invitation of challenges, traumatic experiences,
Mm-hmm.
conflict, temptation.
Mm-hmm.
You are opening the doors to all of these things because you've aspired to be someone that will help people through something. And that doesn't matter whether it's in a secular setting or in a spiritual setting. The responsibility is the same. It carries the same thing. If you are the CEO of a company, you are going to be the one that has to help motivate the people, motivate your workforce. You have to set the example. That's why you have this is the undercover bosses, and they have to go
Yep.
back into the organization because
Yep. Yep.
sometimes they get so detached from their organization they don't realize the pain that people are going through, and then when they
Yep.
do, they realize, actually, I've got to help these people because I've experienced where they are. I see their pain, I know what they're going through, and if I
Mm-hmm.
help them, it helps the organization as a whole.
Yeah.
It's it's that journey for me. That's what leadership, we paint targets on our backs, and this isn't a seat that everyone, people wouldn't aspire to this seat if they really knew what comes with it.
Mm-hmm. No, so Undercover Boss like one of my favorite shows.
I know.
When you said that, like, what you talking about for show? I just watched like about 6 episodes straight, back to back to back last week. But what you said was so important is, and I like most, not I wouldn't say like a lot of the more recent seasons, but the first couple seasons, a lot of the CEOs went in saying like, all right, I'm gonna go in to see what needed to be fixed. Like, how we doing, who needed to do better if the employee doing what they supposed to do. So they always looking for like, okay, how we keep the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
But when they experienced the people, they was like, oh man, we not doing anything for our people. And they doing with so limited resources, and we expecting them to do so much.
Yeah.
And that's the disconnect, is like, if you always top down, you never experience what your people experience.
Yeah.
But if you have a more linear relationship with the people that you serve, then you understand them because you always have a constant connection to their stories. And if you don't know their story, then how can you lead them?
Yeah.
You dictate to people if you don't know their story, and
Yeah.
that go to, I ain't gonna go political, but that's the situation we in the
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
U.S. That's our situation. That's why you can be so narrow minded and focused, because you don't even want to know those stories.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Because I'm gonna say this, and then but this fit with leadership, so it's cool. So I watched a documentary about President Obama's photographer. Now, he'd been a photographer for a couple other presidents too, but he was with Obama the whole time. And so he had a chance to really see behind what the day to day was. and he had a good snapshot of view of who Obama was, not just as a president, but as a father, as a
Yeah.
son, as a husband, and he got to see all those sides of him. Um, but when you compare, that image to what we've had the past 4 years, you've seen somebody that's very detached from people versus a president that was very inclusive of people and with people. And it was one, and it was a photo that was real popular when he was in office, but it's still one of those lasting images of him. It was like a young, like 4 year old, 5 year old black boy, and him and his grandmother, I think, visited the Oval Office, and he was telling President Obama, like, can I? Is your hair like my hair? You know what I'm saying? He's like, that's the first time he had seen somebody that looks like him in that position,
Yeah.
and he was like, people tell me you like me, but I just want to see. So he reached over and like President Obama leaned down and let him touch his head. And that's human. You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
very human for you to be able to be the leader of
The free
like
world.
the free world, and you will humble yourself down enough for a little kid to touch your head.
Mm.
And that's the humanness of leadership that I think a lot of people they dismiss. Now, if you agree with his policies or not, that's fine. But the human connection he made with people, it was just story after story after
Yeah,
story
it's
of people saying like,
undeniable.
it's undeniable. Like he spent time with the people. If it was a hurricane or a shooting or whatever, he spent time with those people and listened to them. And it was a story about the school shooting that was in the elementary school, and they interviewed the husband and the wife of one of the kids that died, and the husband was like, when he saw us, he came straight to us and he just hugged us, and he was like, my wife just cried on the shoulder. He just allowed her to just cry as long as she needed to. Who else gonna do that? Like, what leader do you know that's gonna come into a situation that they know is real charge and it's a crisis and it's tragedy, and they just be present
Yeah.
and just let whatever happen?
Yeah.
That's not that's not a traditional sense of a leader that people think about. They want a leader to come in like, so what we're doing, and
Yeah.
apologize for what's going on. They want to be real
Photo
stately.
opportunity, all of that kind of stuff, and then in there for 5 minutes and straight back out.
Yeah, and he was like, he just hugged my wife and just however long he was like, and it was like minutes, just letting him just cry. It just
Mm.
that's making yourself available to the people that you serve. And that's what's required of you as a true leader is how you gonna be when it is not a photo op. How you gonna be when there's no cameras around? What will people that you've been in leadership for, how will they speak about you and they experience it with you? And that's what matters the most. It really don't matter the bigger things of what you do that people can see. How do people speak about you when there's nobody else around?
So I'll be biting my tongue because I'll be like,
Go.
but on two occasions, you
Mm-hmm.
said the people that you serve. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the key point. You didn't, and it wasn't, and this is the funny thing, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a slip up for you.
No,
It
it was
wasn't a
just
slip up. It was because it's not people, because some people might listen and say, oh, what does he mean, the people that you serve? I
mm-hmm.
think he meant the people that you lead. No,
Mm-hmm.
your job as a leader is not to lead from the front. I love the
Mm-hmm.
fact that you said your organizational structure should look very linear because as a
Mm-hmm.
leader, you need to be amongst the people. You
Mm-hmm.
serve the people. You
Mm-hmm.
lead from the back, not from the
Mm-hmm.
front. You lead
Mm-hmm.
by example. You show them how you are that example. How do you lead a generation to be more compassionate and empathetic and sympathetic and whatever it is without you demonstrating that? And that's what Obama did when he was in leadership. Stark contrast to the way that Donald Trump has been in the office, because hey, there was a protest going on for people being murdered by law enforcement that was supposed to protect them. And what did you do? Because you wanted a photo opportunity. You got the law enforcement that was murdering these people to physically and violently move them out of the way, so you can go and take a picture with a Bible in your hand held upside down,
right?
And then go about your business. Everything that you went to do, you went to a burnt down church with a Bible in your hand upside down. I don't know what image you were trying to send, but it wasn't it. It was not it. Because
that was not it.
The way you dealt with the people that you lead demonstrated your character. Everything for his leadership, everything. It was a presidency, and forgive us, guys, because we're not here to talk politics. It's just that because we're talking about leadership, this is such a good example. But it was a perfect example of arrogant, self-focused, narcissistic leadership. There was no heart in it for the people. I'm president. I will pardon whoever I want to pardon, and I will condemn whoever I want to condemn. I don't care what the facts say. I'm going to do what I want to do, and it's whatever I say goes. I am now the most powerful man in the world, and guess what? I'm going to make sure everyone in the world knows that I'm the most powerful man in the world. And you don't have to like how I'm operating, but that's how I'm going to operate.
No, and so the thing is, there are certain people that want to be led by that type of leader too.
Yeah.
So that's why it's harder to establish a baseline, because in certain people's eyes, that version is what they want. And then what they got in contrast with Obama was not what they wanted. So that's the things. People gravitate toward the leadership that fits their values and their perspectives. And so that's why, like, I had to learn that too, about why would people vote for Trump and not what he stands for, is what people value. People invest in or vote or kind of look up to what, one, can benefit them, but two, it connects to their values. And if your values align that way, then that's what you want to support.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So I know we got a break coming up, but before we go, I wanted to kind of, when I was looking, because our title is unexpected leadership. So I wanted to just break down the definitions of those terms. So unexpected, as we say, not expected, unforeseen, surprising. Those are the definitions of that word. A leader is defined as a person or thing that leads, a guiding or directing head, as of an army, movement, or political group. And I love the fact that it says, a guiding or directing head. A leader is supposed to set the tone. And as we said, the best way to set the tone is by demonstrating it yourself, is by being that example. So we're going to go to a break. When we come back from the break, we're gonna we got a few questions to answer, because we're gonna dig into this and and really chop it up about leadership, about unexpected leaders. So see you after the break. welcome back to the Imperfectly Human podcast. So, just before we went on to the break, we were talking to you about what leadership means, our experiences of being called to leadership, the contrasting examples of leadership that we've had in the US over the last 4 years, and compared to the previous 2 terms served by President Obama. So I've got one of the questions that I've got on this was, do we disqualify ourselves from leadership because we assess the requirements from the wrong perspective? So take that example of what you said. Sometimes we look at the examples of leadership that we've got, and we think, hey, I want to be like that guy, I want to be like this guy, rather than, and we're looking at the facade and not the real requirements of the seat, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what I would say is, it all depends. Well, we do disqualify ourselves from leadership, but the reason why we do it can be different. So one can be that we feel like our limitations will be a barrier to where we want to go, or what type of leadership role that we would, I won't say attracted to, but it's kind of like what we're led to. The other thing is we disqualify ourselves because of what we've done in our past.
I'm glad you said that. Because, so my example was, I was reading Exodus 2 and I was reading about Moses. And I thought, let me get a feel, because hey, when we think of biblical leaders, Moses is one of the biggest examples that comes to mind, because he led the Israelites out of Egypt, out of enslavement, and it took them around in a circle for 40 years, but we'll get to that part. But Moses, when you think about Moses, one of the things that struck me, it says that Moses was born to the tribe of Levi. So he was a Levite, and the Levites were the tribe that tended to serve as the high priest or political seats of office. So he was already born into, it was like he was born into a role. But then he was born at a time where Pharaoh was going around killing all the Israelite boys. So Moses, for his mom, put him in this basket. We all know the story. The princess found him. So for some reason, his circumstances meant that Moses was saved when he should have died right at the beginning. But saving him put him out of sorts. And what I mean by that is that he was an Israelite living as an Egyptian. So I highlighted a few points about Moses. He didn't fit in with the Egyptians or the Israelites. He was a murderer, and that was what I was coming to about his background. So he was a murderer. He was an outcast and a fugitive because he was on the run because Pharaoh was going to kill him for killing an Egyptian. But he was also a defender of the weak and the oppressed, because when he got to I can't remember where he's I can't remember the area, but when he got to the well and he saw the Jethro's daughters getting the water and the shepherds came, he jumped to their defense immediately. When he killed the Egyptian, he was doing it in defense of an Israelite brother. So he was a defender of the people. He was a servant because he served his father-in-law for 40 years. Didn't ask for a thing. He just served and worked as a shepherd, even though he had been royalty. And then he lacked confidence, and he was a self-doubter. And we saw these examples when God called him in Exodus 2. So that's what made me think, well, do we disqualify ourselves because we look at ourselves a particular way?
Yeah. So I'm trying to see if I make this point now. Hold it for me. But So what you said, well, this is what I was thinking about when you were talking. Isn't it ironic that the people that God used the most uh had to that always felt displaced had to deal with being misunderstood for how they then went toward what God called them to.
Mm.
Because God, so just how you laid out with Moses, he was born into a certain tribe, then he was adopted into another 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 whole race of
Yeah,
people, and then had to go out of that and go back to his original people. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So it's like when God calls you or raises you up as a leader, it's not going to be in the traditional sense. So what God calls you to is going to disrupt something that God wants to change.
right.
And most of us want to be leaders to maintain the status quo, and that's not what God calls us to do. Like I said, you look at Jesus, Jesus went against everything that everybody was used to doing.
Right, right, for real.
So when God raised you up, it's not to raise you up to just be comfortable, like, oh, let's everybody be in harmony. He wants you to do some stuff. You got to shake some stuff up.
Yeah,
That's what he's calling you to do, but he equipped you for that. And just like you were saying too, the people that God really used for leadership, they have a long period of time being forgotten or not even noticed. And you got your redeemer, you got your deliverer, you got all these different things
yeah,
amongst you, and you don't even know that. People overlook them and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, and a lot of the preachers, pastors that I listen to that preach, they a lot of them have those type of stories too, where they came up under a pastor and then that pastor didn't let them preach or didn't give them opportunity or they had a long period of time where nothing happened. And it's like they wanted to preach, they wanted to share their gift, and something hindered their gift
yeah,
or suppressed it for so long. And it's building that stamina of like and the endurance of I called you to it, but you got to have a period of humbleness or not being seen to. Because when I raise you up, I need you to be balanced. I don't need you to be distracted when all this stuff starts coming to you. And you're like,
mm.
ooh, this me. Like, I kept you down this long. So when you elevate, you like, I know who gave me this. I'm not gonna act a fool
Right,
with this. I'm a treasure this because I know where I just came from. I don't want to go back there, but I don't want it to be like I did this.
right.
And I think that's what great leaders they have that because I was listening to TD Jakes. He talked about that. I know Keon talked about that. And he actually had a pastor that would put him in place to replace him and then reneged on that and then kicked him out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember the story. I remember the story.
So it's like all these different things. Like, Lord, you called me to this and this was, and then
Yeah,
who I'm supposed to be following? He's like, but honor, and that's what. So that's one thing that, and I know it's not in the question, but I'm gonna say this, and then we can move to the next one. But the honor of your leader will make you be a good leader. If you
yeah,
don't know how to honor the people that you're under, you won't be honorable when you get raised up.
right. I hear that.
And that's the key.
No, I hear that. I hear that. It's true because a lot of people are quick to talk bad about their leaders, their
hmm
bosses, or whatever.
hmm
But
hmm
if you don't know how to honor someone even when they don't deserve honor,
Right.
then it it impacts your ability to lead
Right.
with honor and
hmm
with grace.
hmm
Um, and I think that is a trait that we all have to work on in ourselves because the thing is, our nature is that our pride reacts.
hmm
Oh, who does he think he is? And it should
hmm
be no, no, no. Let me suppress that. Let me honor this man, even though he is being whatever.
Yep.
God put him here, so I will honor him. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, I was going to come to it later, but that's what David did to Saul. He
Mm-hmm.
did not touch the Lord's anointed because he knew God put Saul as king. He installed him as king. And even when God had taken the anointing away from Saul and put it on David, David said, until the Lord chooses to take Saul, he cannot take Saul's life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for him to take Saul's life. It is for God to remove Saul however he chooses. He
Mm-hmm.
cannot, he can't outstep his position. But
Mm-hmm.
then quickly bringing it back to Moses, I felt, if we don't deal with our insecurities and how we disqualify ourselves, we
Mm-hmm.
potentially, as leaders, end up in the same position that Moses did, which is
Mm-hmm.
not truly fulfilling his purpose because he couldn't deal with his own insecurities and his
Mm-hmm.
own reservations about what God had called him to be and what God called him to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we potentially block our potential as leaders when we don't deal with our own disqualification of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And that goes right into the language that we speak towards ourselves.
Yeah.
So we always try and watch what we say to other people, just like you were saying too. Like the people that treat us wrong or do something that we don't enjoy, we try and honor them. But how do we honor ourselves? Because we don't honor ourselves. We talk to ourselves any kind of way. And if we realize if we can hear back what we say in our head about ourselves, it's like, man, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't dare say this to somebody else.
Yeah.
But we saying that internally all day long. And
Yeah.
like you said, that's what blocks us because of that internal dialogue that we have about ourselves to ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So, question number two.
All right.
Do some of us like the authority of the seat, but dislike the responsibility of the seat?
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
I know we don't talked about all of this in the introduction because
yeah,
there's someone that was doing that for the last 4 years.
yeah. So the first part of that question is people like the power
Yeah.
of leadership. Um, but what they don't like is the crisis or the I see we talk about responsibility, but it's even more pieces to it of that. It's the no, okay, I'll say it like this. What people like about leadership is they like the power. What they don't like is the accountability.
Right.
And that's the other piece of it. You can't have leadership without accountability because if you're the head of something, all the questions or all the major concerns are coming to you,
Yeah.
and you have to come with an answer. So I was this came to mind earlier, but I'll this is a perfect example of that. So I was I've been over the scholarship fund that I created in my grandfather's name for about 7 years or something. So we do an annual uh like banquet for the kids and
Yeah.
give away scholarship money or whatever like that. So this year, not this year, but one of the years, uh, it kind of came down the line that we might be able to get like an NFL player. So, like I said, I'm a Saints fan, and if people that don't know, like Deuce McAllister, he used to be a running back for the Saints, and so it kind of came across to where we could probably get him. I had talked to Deuce and all that kind of stuff, and the other side had talked to him or whatever, and so we were kind of promoting it like he was gonna be there, and I was pretty,
Yeah.
confident that it was gonna come together, and it didn't, and it wasn't in any control of mine. Like it wasn't my fault that he wasn't coming, but as the leader, I had to step in and take the
Yeah.
accountability.
Take the heat.
Yeah, and when I tell you, I literally was sick about it because I was like, man, I always try and present some of the people that will make them, feel good or to honor them and stuff. And I was like, man, I feel like I failed, even though it was out of my hands. The reason why it didn't
Yeah.
happen, and like I'll never forget it. Like I got up in church and said, because the people like, is he coming? Because we were gonna do tickets and stuff to it and all that kind of stuff. And I literally felt like I was gonna pass out. I was like, oh, I gotta tell these people they ain't coming. And I was so sick about it. And so I got up and I was like, due to unforeseen, circumstances, he's not coming or whatever. And and one of our deacons, he pays now, but he got him. He said, he's like, you know what, like we don't need no NFL player. We got our superstar. Like that he out MVP and all that kind of stuff. And when I tell you that it did something for me that day because I was so low because I was like, oh, I failed and everything a failure. And when he said that to me, it was like it kind of just, I did my part. I was accountable for it, even though, and so it wasn't as bad as I thought. But I had to step into that to do that because I wouldn't have been right if I wouldn't have, sometimes you had to fall on the sword.
Yeah.
And I fell on it for that. But I learned so much from that because I was upfront about what was going on, people like, oh, okay, cool, we still coming. Like, they ain't think nothing else about it, but I was thinking about it in a totally different way.
Yeah. 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 I see. I think one of the things that I learned, and this is, and again, it goes back to a point that you made, because and it was highlighted in that story that you just told.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
the the deacon that came, he honored
Mm-hmm.
you, and he was like,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, Dr. Johnson is our MVP. He
Mm-hmm.
honored you, and at a
Yeah.
time where you felt loved.
Yep.
And
Yep. Yep.
one of the things that I learned in my professional career, because one of the things I didn't want to do, I'd always said it from the beginning, was I didn't want any direct reports.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime someone said, oh, yeah, so we're going to make so and so report to you, I was like, mm-mm,
Mm-hmm.
no, no, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Until the point that I couldn't avoid it.
Yep.
And then I had this team of people, and it was because my role was still is very senior facing, and we work on multi-million pound multi-million pound projects. Sometimes when things are not going right, it seems like, so when in my world of business analysis, we are the ones that go out there and we talk to the potential people that the solution is being built for, to understand what their needs are. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if the solution that is being built doesn't meet the business need, the immediate reaction is that, hey, the business analysts must have misunderstood what the business wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's never down to whoever is building the solution or whatever. It's the the business analysts always have to take the blame. That's how it
Mm-hmm.
always ends up. We are always the scapegoats.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this team of, I think, about 6 or 7 analysts, and all sorts was being said. And it was the first time where it was, I had to step up and say, hey, wait a minute. I'm not going to let you talk about my team in that
Mm-hmm.
way, because these guys, no one was here when these guys were in at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning and leaving at 9 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
No one was here when we were skipping lunch breaks to get things done. No one was here when we were pulling crazy shifts just to try and deliver when we were going back and forth and negotiating with difficult people that didn't want to hear a word of what we were saying. No one was here. These guys have worked their hardest to get this out. And if you want to blame anyone, then blame me, because I'm responsible for them. So if you want to blame anyone, blame me. And my team came out behind me and said, no, we're not going to let you take, you know, we're happy that you want to fall on the sword for us, but if we're going to go down, we go down together. And that was, for me, it was a similar example to yours. And that's where I learned that, hey, being a leader is not about, it's not about send these guys out. And you've got some leaders that be like, you guys go out and fight the war. If you get killed, we'll send the flowers to your family. It felt more like, hey, if someone is going to go down first, I'll go down before I let you guys go down. And when I said that, they were like, no, if we're going to go down, we go down together. And to me, that's when I realized the responsibility. That is when I realized the responsibility of leadership. Because I wasn't willing to let them take the fall for something when they had worked so hard. And when leaders start to realize that, when leaders start to, the authority of the seat, it means nothing, as you said, without the accountability or the responsibility that comes with it. If you can't handle being accountable for something when it is horrid, when it is absolutely horrible, then you don't deserve the authority that comes with the seat.
So I'm gonna say this one thing about what you were saying, and I wrote it down, and it's a key point. So I think definitely people that's thinking about being in leadership it's a concept that you just laid out. It is number one that they need to get. So what you did when you did that for your team is you praised them in public. And the people that you serving, they need to hear you praise them in public. Now, if it was an issue that you needed to correct, you need to correct in private. You need to bring them to your office, you need to whatever, have that one-on-one dialogue, but don't try and do it in front of other people, because then that breaks that trust. Now, you can correct people, they don't mind being corrected, but they don't want that to be out in the forefront.
Yeah.
And like I said, because I've been corrected plenty
Oh,
of
me
times,
too. Me too.
all in front of folks,
Me too.
all out of order too. And that breaks that trust. Is like, well, why should I really, if you treat your people right, like the saying goes, like they'll run through a brick wall for you. Like literally,
Yeah.
people will do for you what you need them to do if they feel valued.
Yeah.
And that breaks that value when you do that in public with people.
Yeah.
Because it's like you don't value me enough to bring me to the side and say what you're gonna say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
want
No, I
to.
feel that. And just for reference, there were two scriptures that jumped out to me when I was thinking about that question. And one was Romans 12:8, which was, if your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it's giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. And all of those points there are about accountability for your gift. So that really resonated. And then there was another one, is Ecclesiastes 10:17. And it was and this one kind of came to me, kind of was more in a roundabout way, but it was, happy is the land whose king is a noble leader and whose leaders feast at the proper time to gain strength for their work, not to get drunk. And it made me think about, it was what made me think about, hey, there are some people that like the authority, so they just want to sit at the top and they just want to feast and get drunk and be like, hey, I'm the leader, I'm the boss. And there are some people that, no, actually, I'm here to do a job and I'm going to strengthen myself to do the work that is required of me. So
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of what prompted that question.
Mm-hmm.
So you posed the
Yeah.
last question. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you ask the last question.
All right. Okay. So the last question is, what does it mean to eat last as a leader?
So when you posed this question,
Mm-hmm.
I really had to think about it for a while
Mm-hmm.
because and I'll say it this way.
Okay.
In my house, I consider myself, and I believe my wife and my children consider me to be the leader of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to dinner time,
Mm-hmm.
my wife wants to give me the biggest portion.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to make sure that my plate is set up and everything, you know, before hers and everything. Um, Whereas my attitude, and I'll say this because although I may be the figurehead of the family, we lead together because, as the Bible says, she is my helpmeet. So it's not that
Mm-hmm.
I am above her; we are together, and but I'm the mouthpiece. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess this she reflects how I also behave, and we behave in a similar manner. But our attitude towards at dinner time is, well, you make sure that everybody else has got, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll have whatever is left.
Mm-hmm.
And that, for me, that is what leadership is about. Like, let me take care of you guys, and I will make do with whatever is left. Because as long as you guys are strengthened and capable to do what you need to do, I'm confident that we can get to where we need to get to. It's whereas we got other leaders that are like, hey, well, I'm the boss. I should get the cream of the crop. I should be first. Why has he got a bigger plate than me? Um, I don't believe that. I believe as we've said, the role of a leader is a servant. How can you serve others when you always want the best? You always want the first fruits. And the first fruits don't even belong to you. The first fruits belong to God.
Right.
So how are you always trying to take what doesn't belong to you and then you starve the people? Everything about how Christ led. He said, when you take care of the sick, take care of the hungry, take care of the poor, them you will always have with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and someone might point out and say, well, when Mary Magdalene came and she broke the jar of alabaster oil and she poured it on and yeah, that was significant, that was symbolic. She
Mm-hmm.
was she was there was she may not have known it, but she was preparing him for burial.
Mm-hmm.
It was symbolic. He was about to go to be crucified at that point. Um, so it's not like he was taking. It's not like he was getting special treatment. It was as though she was preparing a corpse for burial, as they do as is tradition in that time. They put perfumes on the corpse and then they wrap it up and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What she did at that point was symbolic. No one else saw it. But when you read back and when you look through, that was a symbolic moment of preparing Christ for what he was about to do. So, but when you look at Christ, Christ was never, it was never about him. When he broke bread and when he broke the loaves, he gave and he said, feed the people. It didn't say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm gonna multiply this, but let me take my portion first. He went straight to feeding the people.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he did, when he turned the water into the wine, he turned the water into the wine for the people. Everything was about feeding and serving those around him before anything before he didn't even take any recognition for himself. He was just a willing vessel to be used because he knew that if people saw the works that he did in the name of his father, then they would be connected to his father.
Nah, you answered the question. You answered the question. You definitely answered it. But what I wanted to focus on, what you said, and what this what came to me is like when you're able to put yourself in the foreground, you won't have to worry about eating. But if you put yourself in the forefront,
Yeah.
that's when you always have to worry about how you're gonna eat. And and I think a lot of people don't understand that. It's not saying that you're trying to deprive yourself or you're not worthy to eat. Is that you want to give the people that you serve nourishment first.
You're not the
Because
priority.
they gonna make sure, just like you said, like your wife, she gonna make sure you eat. You want to make sure everybody else is fed, but she gonna make sure you fed. But that's because of how you honor. You see that? You see
Yeah,
how that
yeah,
happens?
yeah.
It's the honor. And so the reason why I posed that question, and I think it's a book that's called that too. But for me, I had it in a real time example. So at church, we used to do breakfast every Sunday, and so I would teach Sunday school, but then I was in the finance room too because I was a deacon. So I literally get through teaching my class, had to go in the finance room, count the money, and do all that kind of stuff. So I was last, and so I would come to the fellowship hall, and I asked them like, "Hey, did everybody else eat?" They're like, "Yeah." And he go, "We set your plate aside or whatever." So I was the last one that ate, and they knew I was the last one, so I didn't have to worry about my food. But I wanted to make sure everybody, all the kids, because a lot of the kids, they might not have had breakfast,
Right.
or their parents might not have been able to give them breakfast. So breakfast to them was way more important than breakfast for me. So as long as they could eat, then I knew I was still gonna have food, but I wasn't gonna eat until they were fed. It's the same thing for like we used to do prayer breakfast and stuff. Like all the men would get together, like the deacons and stuff, on Saturday. And I would always try and be toward the back because we had a lot of our deacons, they were older in age or whatever. And I wanted to honor that. So I could be back to the back. And so for me, I always tried to position myself where I was good. Like I said, I knew I was gonna eat, but it's the honor of the people in front
Yeah.
and making sure that they covered. And I mean the same thing for the banquets. Like I would work through the whole thing. I probably wouldn't even get to see most of the stuff that would go on like every year. And people would have to set my place aside because it would literally be me eating toward the end of the event for the most part. And people like, "Did you eat? Hold up, let me fix you. Hold on, hold on, sit down, eat." Because I like they're like, "Look,
Yeah.
everybody else good. You sit down and eat. You eat, you eat." And so it's a principle that I've stuck with, even in the business too. Is I try and make sure that in our projects like everybody covered, and not just like covered financially, but spiritually and emotionally. Like I'm always trying to check in with everybody, like how you doing, like what's going on, what we need because you had to communicate those things. Because if it's just like, oh, we all together and you got to get in where you fit in and you're supposed to do what I'm saying,
Yeah.
that's missing the point. So sometimes you have to be in the foreground in order for your people to get what they need. And sometimes, so that eating too may be giving them the responsibility to do things without your input. So you might have to distance yourself a little bit too, so they can gain what they need to gain
Yeah.
that they wouldn't gain if you were too far close to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, that last question of yours was ah You set us up. You set us up for the final segment. So we're going to take another break. We come back and we'll talk about the application of this and how we step into our leadership positions as unexpected leaders. Because believe me, I didn't expect to be in any kind of position in leadership, and I know Terrence didn't as well. So yeah, we'll see you after the break. Welcome back to the Imperfectly Human podcast. We're going to cover with you right now the applications of leadership, or setting yourself up as for that responsibility of being a leader when it's unexpected. Because if you are truly walking in your purpose, some of us, you'll be in a position where you did not expect to be, and you'll be leading people that you didn't expect to be leading. So how do you deal with it? How do you handle it? How do you thrive in it? So we've got some questions that you can ask yourself. First one, what leadership qualities do you possess? So how do they go about assessing that?
All right. So what I would say is, well, what things leadership has a lot to do with what you're passionate about. And the best leaders kind of lead from what they are at the core. And and so I think for a lot of people, don't think about things that you have got it have gotten like applauded for or something like that. But what are the things that align with your values that you can bring to people? So most people that are, real nice and warm people, they are natural encouragers, but they might not believe that that's a strength. They might like, this is my personality, but that's a strength to be able to talk to people and encourage them, to give them something or a boost to go for it on a day, or to give them a kind word. Or even if you're a person where you are you kind of help structure stuff. So you might be the person that help get things done. You might not think that's a strength. You might just say like, I don't have time to be going back and forth with people. I just need you to do what you need to do. But that's a strength though, if you understand it that way. And and so I would say, like for myself, like one of my biggest strengths is my creativity. That's always been at the core to everything that I do, like whether it's teaching and counseling or business or whatever. I'm always trying to find what's another way, or more innovative way, or more time efficient way to do something.
Yeah.
And that allows me to do that. Uh, but if I try to compare myself to somebody else, I might diminish that, because how other people use that in leadership might be different than I use it. And so then when you compare yourself, then you start to diminish what's unique about you. And so your strengths are what's unique about you, but it's the things that will draw people towards you. And when you doing that, that's how you receive the blessings that you're looking for, because what you have is attracting what they need.
Right. Do you know what? I completely agree. So I worked in the banking sector, and when you come across bankers,
Mm,
um, usually they are these crazy people that super motivated, highly hyperactive go-getters, always
mm-hmm,
on the go. That's how they're perceived. Now,
mm-hmm,
I would say when I'm ready, I am quite energetic and stuff, but
mm-hmm,
I didn't really fit that mold, especially
mm-hmm,
when I looked at the sort of people that were team leaders and all of that, management. I didn't really fit that mold. So for me, when I became a leader, my natural or my go-to, as you said, was my what I considered just my personality trait.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I cared about how my team were doing.
Mm-hmm.
My focus was always about, hey, how are you? What's going on with you? How
Mm-hmm.
is life with you?
Mm-hmm.
What's on your mind? How are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And really, I I dug into getting to know each member of my team personally, not
Mm-hmm.
surface level. Not It wasn't about oh, these are your deliverables and this is what I need you to hit. Before I even talked to them about work, I needed to know who they were and how, what was going on in their lives and what they loved, what they didn't like, what their hobbies were. And I built a rapport and a relationship with them so that when they didn't fit that personality that they had shown
Mm-hmm.
to me, I could immediately connect that, hey, something is wrong with so and so.
Mm-hmm.
How do we
Mm-hmm.
fix? Let me get some quality time with them so we can talk and figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the trust that my team then had in me was completely different to how they reacted and responded to everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
because my everyone in my team felt more like family than we felt colleagues.
Right. Yeah.
So I realized that that was my approach to leadership. I
Mm-hmm.
realized that that was my strength in leadership. Um, and like you said, when you assess who you are and what God has put in you, you realize the characteristics He has given you to help you lead. And
Mm-hmm.
our downfall is that we always look at other people and try to emulate what they've done. And
Yep.
you can't emulate someone else's approach to leadership because you're not that person. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
beauty about um, how God has created us all as individuals. He's given to, and the Bible says it, to each of you, He has given unique gifts. So
Yep.
you have to walk in your unique gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so I'm gonna say this. I know we probably ain't gonna have time to hit it like this, but another way you can
Oh,
apply
you
this
you got
is
time? You got 4 minutes.
okay, all right, okay, we good then. All right. So this is what I was thinking about too. And this is a way that people can apply it. So not only do you start to assess like what you think your strengths are, then ask people that you really trust, that you really close to, and ask them what they think your strengths are, because you might be missing some. So I think it'd be cool for us to ask each other like what strengths that we see in each other.
Ooh, okay. Let me go first. Um, so if I was to talk about the strengths that I see in you,
Yeah.
um, you have this knack of being able to, I kind of guess, preempt what I might be thinking sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It might be the next thing that I want to say to you about a situation, and then you just turn
Mm-hmm.
around and say it. It's like you read the situation based on
Mm-hmm.
just, you know, conversations we've had in the past, and you kind of get to, it's like you've kind of known. It's like ninjutsu. I'm taking it back to my martial arts and stuff. But there's a form of ninjutsu where a ninja is able to
Yeah.
copy their opponent and then preempt what their opponent is going to do. And it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like that technique. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I know what you're about to say, and then you say it. So
Yeah.
that that quality and that
Uh-huh.
ability to motivate people to say, okay, I know what you're going to say. So I'm going to tell it to you, but how are you then going to make that happen? You kind of
Mm-hmm.
you kind of say, yeah, I'm going to validate, well, not validate, but I'm going to confirm what you were thinking, but then I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
put it back on you and encourage you to then come up with how you're going to make that happen. And that is a
Mm-hmm.
strength that not many people have that. Not many people can read a situation and then take it to the next step of saying, okay, cool, we're on the same page. Now what are you going to do about it? So
Mm-hmm.
that's a strength I see in you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna say my strength, then I explain kind of how I can do that or where that come from. But so I think, and you talked about it too, and you said it a couple different ways and kind of frameworks. But you are a natural like encourager. I would say that. Uh, but it's different from just like the the flowery kind of like, oh, like this kind of, it's more of a direct encouragement of like, not this where I see you at. This is where I know you want to go. So this is what I'm gonna say to get you going towards that.
Right.
So it's a real practical encouragement. That's what I can say. But it's needed, and like you were saying too, it's kind of checking in with people. And so it's like, just like yesterday or just like different points in the week, it's like, hey, what's going on? Like, hey, you all right? Are you good? Or whatever like that. And so that's good. Like even if it's like even if I am doing good, it's cool. But it's just knowing that you got people around that want to make sure you good and check in with you. And even if I wasn't good, it wouldn't be like I'd be trying to hide it. Be like, if I ain't good, I just look like
Yeah.
I ain't too good. And so that's good when you got people that would check in with you. So like you do that well naturally, and a lot of people don't have that, or they don't use that for the right purposes. Because some people
Right.
use that to manipulate.
Right.
And so it's like,
Right.
so
Right.
a lot of people don't use it for good. A lot of people use it for bad. So yeah. But to go back to what you were saying as far like me anticipating, it's just patterns. And so a lot of, just like what you were saying with the people on your team, once I get to know somebody, I get to know they kind of rhythm and pattern
Right.
of things. And so, but my step is, because I'm in my head a lot, or I'm thinking about a lot of stuff, I can anticipate what people would think about in that situation once I have the information. So when I say stuff, it's like, in this situation, this probably what you're thinking about. And so I say it to confirm or deny. And then
Right.
once you may say like, okay, cool. Now this is the next step to that. So that's kind of where that come from. So
It's funny.
I learned, yeah.
So
Go.
you know what? How I'm going to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
It's discernment. It's discernment because and both of our gifts operate from discernment, but from in slightly different ways. And because I was going to
Mm-hmm.
say the reason I am the way that I am is that I may be doing what I'm doing, and suddenly someone will come to my head, you will come to my thoughts, maybe
Mm-hmm.
someone else, and
Mm-hmm.
I just feel an urge to go and check in on that person,
Mm-hmm.
and I can
Mm-hmm.
either be obedient and go and check in, or I
Yep.
could be like, nah, 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 I'll do it later. And usually
Yep.
when I'm like, oh, I'll do it later, then I hear from the person, they'll be like, oh, this happened and this, and then I'm like, oh man, that's
Mm-hmm.
why I was getting the urge to go and check in on them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
more frequently now, when it happens, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go check in on that person because
Mm-hmm.
something, I feel this, I'm being led to go and check in on that person. And it's
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
like
Yep.
the same with what you're saying, because when you say that, you say it so that it can
Mm-hmm.
be confirmed. It's that
Mm-hmm.
discernment. God is giving you that discernment. Okay, this is what
Mm-hmm.
this person needs right now, and I'm telling
Mm-hmm.
you in advance so that you can let them know that they ain't
Yeah.
going crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nah, but I agree with that too, because I've had that similar kind of pull too. So I do the same thing too, as far as like checking in with people. People come to my mind and gotta place them on my heart. Like, I got a call, a
Yeah.
text or whatever. I'm like, I don't know why. Then people, I come like, look, I don't know why. You just on my mind. I had a
Yeah.
call, I had a text. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. So, um, second question they can ask themselves: how can God use my shortcomings to lead His people? Yeah.
This a question. Like, I'm putting down there, and it's a question. Like, ooh, this a question. So, and it kind of go into who we're talking about. So you talked about Moses a lot, Saul, Paul, and all that kind of stuff, and it kind of went. So it went with the scripture that I had put down, like First Corinthians, first chapter 27 through the 29th. Instead, God chose things the world considers foolish in order to shame those who think they are wise. And he chose things
Mm,
that are powerless to shame those who are powerful. God chose things despised by the world, things counted as nothing at all, and used them to bring to nothing what the world considers important. As a result, no one can ever boast in the presence of God. So the shortcomings of the things that we think that disqualify us is the reason why God chose us.
yeah.
uh, so, okay, I just take me for example. One of the things that I just really I'm gonna be honest, I hated about myself was that I was nice. I hated being called nice. It was just like, man, why can't you be like everybody else? Like, we want everybody to like, oh, he crazy. He punch folks in the face. Like, oh, Terrence nice. He a nice guy, whatever. Like, why I can't get there? Like, why I gotta be the nice guy? Like, why? I for real like didn't like that for a long period of my life because I was like, man, that's all people say. Like, oh, you the nice person. But I, what it was that niceness I've learned can disarm. Um, I don't want to say aggressiveness, but it can manage crisis situations. So it's really God gave me that because it makes me able to be approachable to people and talk to them when situations that might arise that they might be a little more elevated or angry or something. And how I approach people, people don't feel threatened by
Right.
me initially when I come in and conversate with them, and so I can bring people down. Versus if I came in too strong with people, then that would heighten how they feel. And so it really was something that I learned to use and utilize. And it wasn't a weakness. It's just I perceived it as weak compared to the people
Yeah.
that I was seeing or how I was seeing other people conduct how they did. So
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Um, so I thought about this, and um, I guess we've kind of we've touched on it um, a few times.
mhm.
So the things that I considered my shortcomings were my failings in certain areas of life, whether it was poor business management in the past, or just different things, or maybe if I felt that I made a bad decision as a parent.
Mhm.
Oh man, there was like a perfect example. There was one time we was in IKEA with the kids, and
Mhm.
we were looking at a sofa, and my my daughter was on the floor drawing, and I didn't see her behind me, and I stepped on her hand with my Tim's
Oh,
on.
that's a team.
And oh man, dude, I thought I broke her fingers, and I was
Yeah.
heartbroken. And I was like, what kind of parent am I? And you know, she doesn't even bug about that. But for me, I always look at the where I feel like I've dropped the ball, and I
Mhm.
immediately disqualify myself and say, well, why would God want to use me? Well, why would well, look what I did here. But what I learned was that the things that God allows me to go through in life, each one of them, not only is it to keep me humble,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also a learning curve to help me lead. So what I consider my weaknesses and my shortcomings, God eventually turns to into my strengths when it comes to leading other people. And um, I guess my mom would say that she would say this, that one of my one of the criticisms my mum had of me when I was young was that, oh, you talk too much, you tell everybody everything, and but my transparency was considered a shortcoming. But
Mm-hmm.
actually, my transparency is one of my strengths in leadership, because I've learned to show that the people that I lead that I am not perfect, that I will make mistakes, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not afraid to tell you that I've made a mistake. I'm not afraid to stand up and own my mistakes. And if we can all stand up and own our mistakes, then we can do better.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a strength in leading others.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, for me, it's, stop looking at your shortcomings as things to hold you back, but look at how God can use those shortcomings to truly help you fulfill the purpose that He has for your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that's a.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about that one.
but one thing I wanted to say before we get off that one, but both of the things that we talked about was about perspective. As soon as our perspective changed about what we thought was our limitation, then it wasn't a limitation and it
Right,
wasn't a weakness. But if you perceive it wrong, or whatever you perceive in the wrong context, then it will be
a
a
limitation.
limitation or weakness.
Yeah, no, that's dope. That's dope. Okay. So last one. So last question they can ask themselves: if I'm a leader, are my actions aligned to leading the people He has called me to lead? Mm.
Mhm. I don't know why I wrote all these. I don't know why I wrote these. Woo!
You want me to go first? You want me to go
No,
first?
I go. So one thing, so for me, uh, it can sometimes be difficult to stay aligned, uh, to lead the people that God has you to lead, because you sometimes get detached from your the call that God gave you. So sometimes you get caught up in what you have to do instead of focusing on who you're doing it for.
Right.
And that would then pull you into it almost kind of like you go on autopilot. It's like, okay, this what needs to be done. This what I need to do. And you just like you were saying earlier about undercover boss, is kind of that. It's how do we maintain or grow what we're doing, but separate from the people that's either doing it or who we're doing it for.
Yeah.
And that what pulls you out of alignment. And then you start to do things or start to watch stuff or do stuff that will then start to distance you further and further. So you're not growing either. It's just like with, you take for instance like a pastor. A pastor is only as effective as how much he's growing or he's grown. If he stops trying to inform himself or grow, the people he leads won't grow. The same thing for business. If you're in business, if you're not constantly trying to improve yourself, then the outcomes are not going to improve for the people you lead or the people you want to serve. The
Right.
same thing for me teaching. I had to continuously learn new things or bring things into the classroom setting to give to my students, but I couldn't stop and be satisfied with what I knew up until the point that I had to teach them. As I'm teaching them, I still have to learn to teach them more effectively. So I'm refreshing what I know as I'm trying to give it to them.
Right.
And that's what we'll miss. And then it's all about the productivity and not the experience of the day-to-day things that you need to do to help better yourself.
No, that's good. That's good. Ooh, now you put the pressure on me.
You got it. You got it. You got it. You've been talking good all day today.
So I'm gonna draw from my how do I put it? My biblical reference that I picked on.
Okay.
And for this example, I have David.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that I would say is this, and I'll first set the context. So actually, yeah, I'm going to do it the other way around. So I'm going to go to
Okay.
1 Samuel 17,
Mm-hmm.
45 to 47 first. And it says, David replied to the Philistine, you come at me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you and cut off your head. And then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, but not with a sword and a spear, but this is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. So, and then I will step. So David had this view of himself. What I wrote down was David saw himself as a giant killer, not because of his own abilities, but because of the God who rescues him.
Mm-hmm.
So when we consider ourselves to, as the question says, leading the people that we've been called to lead, we need to understand our purpose in leadership and who we are leading for.
Mm-hmm.
And when we understand who we are leading for, we understand our source of strength. When we understand our source of strength, we have an understanding of where we are plugged into or where we are connected to. When we understand who we are connected to, we understand that the way that we perceive a situation or the way that the world perceives us as a leader is not the way that God perceives us as a leader. And that takes me back to my initial point, which was 1 Samuel 16, 6 and 7. And that's when when God sent Samuel to anoint David. So it says, when they arrived, Samuel took one look at Eliab and thought, surely this is the Lord's anointed. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So when you are in leadership, the first thing you need to consider is your heart in leadership. Is your heart aligned to leading these people? Is your heart aligned to love? Is your heart aligned to justice? Is your heart aligned to compassion? Is your heart aligned to peace? Is your heart aligned to grace, mercy, and all the things that you are required to be as a leader? Because if it's not, then you are not called to leadership. You may look the part, you may be tall, you may be built like Hercules, you may be an Adonis or whatever you want to call it. But the truth of the matter is that inside you are a frail, wimpy person because your heart lacks the character that God requires in a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can align your heart to God's view of leadership, then your leadership will be something to be written about, irrespective of what you do. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we look at David's life, David messed up so many times. Um, but in his leadership of the people, so David failed a lot in his personal life,
Mm-hmm.
but in his leadership of the people, his heart was always aligned to God. His heart was always, God, how do you want me to lead this people? And he was
Mm-hmm.
also very repentant in his personal life as well. Again,
Mm-hmm.
which just showed an alignment of his heart, seeking to come back to God and always make things right with God. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's the heart. If you ever fall out of connection with God in your heart, then your leadership will go astray.
Mm-hmm. Nah, that was good. Nah, that's real good because it's that's kind of going when people say you have to have a heart for people. You do
Yeah,
because it comes from that. It comes from that mutual um want to better people and see them be better. And that's really what anything that you create or you want to be head over, you should want the people that you serve to be the best that they can be.
yeah,
And all you trying to do is put the parameters and construct what will help them get there. And depending on what role you have in leadership, you might have a small population of people to do that with, or you might have thousands, millions of people.
yeah,
But it all starts from that. So it goes right back to kind of the two examples we started with at the beginning. You could see the heart in both of them examples. Well, you
yeah,
can see the heart and not see the heart. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's what you. So whether you agree with the policies or not, you can't argue about the heart
Yeah,
part.
for sure.
And I think that's so. How are we on time?
Oh, we bang like right now. Boom.
Oh, we on it. Okay, I'm gonna say this one last thing, and
There
then
he
I think
is.
we can
You
close
go
out.
for it.
All right, so this was something that I so I said I was gonna mention about Jeremiah, but this is gonna be how I introduce him and close it out at the same time. So a lot of times with leadership, God calls us to say things that we don't want to say, but it's necessary for the people that He is called us for. And so for me, I know it was some, and I was just walking around here like a week or so ago. It's like, Lord, it's like, I always feel like I'm talking to people about what they, need to do or what will help better them, but they won't listen. And then the Lord was like, well, how do you think I feel? And I was like, thank you, Lord. I was like, I'll be quiet.
Oh yeah.
So I just had to say that because somebody will understand that it
Oh, I
helped me.
understand it. I understand it.
I was like, okay, Lord, okay, I see. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
So they come with the territory. If the Lord can he can have grace with us with all the stuff He calls us to and we don't do. And if we lead people and they don't respond to what we feel like He's giving us, man, it's just what He experienced with us every day.
yeah. No, that's wow. That is, man. That's a powerful statement. That is a
Yeah.
seriously powerful statement because
Well,
we don't. A lot of the times we don't acknowledge that. We don't.
mm-mm.
We it's what we always say on here that we get in our feelings. We get in our feelings
Uh-huh.
when people aren't doing certain things, but
Yeah.
it comes back. I always use this example when I talk about marriage, and
Mm-hmm.
men talk about, well, my wife isn't submitted to me. Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
you ain't submitted to the Lord.
Uh-huh.
Because the Bible says she should submit to you as you submit unto the Lord. Well, if you ain't submit to the Lord, why should she submit to you? And
Mm-hmm.
it's that same thing in every area of our lives. That it's like
Yep.
God is speaking to you, and you're not listening, but you're mad that the people that you're supposed to be
Somebody else
moving
ain't
around with.
listening.
So yeah, no, that's a powerful point.
Yeah, I had to. It was the perfect way to close it, but I had to say
Yeah, no,
that before we finished up.
that's awesome. This has been a really good conversation, and we really hope this has been a blessing to you guys that have been listening. Like we always say, we appreciate you
Mm-hmm.
tuning in every week and
Yep.
spending this time with us. Um, we enjoy putting in the work and bringing this to you on a
Mm-hmm.
weekly basis.
Yeah.
We hope you're enjoying the new format, and it for us has definitely given us
Mm-hmm.
a lot more. How do I put it? It's it's really it's really made the conversation sharper for us.
Yep.
Like I said, we're always transparent. Don't get me wrong. The
Mm-hmm.
conversations we had before were great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this has given it such a sharp focus. It gives it so much more impact and allows people to take a lot more home um,
Mm-hmm.
very quickly. So
Yeah.
so we're going to do it like we normally do. I'm going to give you the socials, and then we're going to close it out. So for me, you can catch me on Instagram at DY Daily. You can catch me on Twitter at DY Daily. You can catch me on the Daily Perspective podcast every Thursday at 9 a.m. GMT. You can catch us on Facebook, Daily Perspective Network. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, you already know where we are.
Right.
So, and also email me, david@dailyperspective.co.uk. And yeah, keep checking the blogs. Something does pop up every, be patient with me on that. There's a lot of moving parts. But yeah, we're looking forward to all the different things that we're going to be bringing you in the future. There's a lot on my mind about things that we'd like to do. But as Terrence has put it, I have to be obedient and listen to the voice of God. Sometimes I want to run before I'm supposed to walk. So I'm going to stop talking about things that are coming in the future and wait for God to make them manifest before I start talking about them. So be patient with me. But yeah, that's me for the socials.
Yeah. So I will piggyback off of what David said. Be patient with me because I said last week that I was gonna have all my stuff and I ain't got it yet. So I apologize. I'm working on it. So as of right now, it's still at iProgress. Email info@iprogresscc.com. At iProgressCC on Instagram and Facebook. So we'll probably talk after we get off about the upcoming crossover episode with Our Progress and Imperfectly Human again. Like I said, if you didn't get to watch or listen to the one that we did last year, you need to be careful what you pray for. It was great. It was a great conversation.
It was.
So definitely go back if you haven't watched or listened to that, and definitely go back and watch it or listen to it. But we will do another one of those soon. So we'll schedule that and let you know when that will be. I have some things, but like David said, I'm not gonna keep talking about stuff until it's done. So amen.
Amen.
Just know that when the Lord release it and He say go and do it, then you will see it. But just know things in various stages of completion. And when they get to that point to be shared, then share them. So, that's it.
So we're going to close this out like we always do and remind you that Christianity is a personal walking relationship between you and God. You are not, will not, and never will be perfect, but that's okay. God loves you and wants you to come just as you are. His grace covers all. Live free from condemnation and do not crucify yourself. Be renewed by the grace of God through Christ Jesus and become who you were created to be. And with that said, I am Mr. Daley signing off.
And I'm Dr. Johnson.
And we'll catch you on the next episode of Imperfectly Human. Peace.
All right.